How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Don't know why I've got a desk today. It makes it feel very formal, like I'm gonna read the news to you. But today, in this video, I'm really excited to make this one because I'm gonna be talking about a topic of magic I am super passionate about, and that is jazz magic, or jam magic, or improv magic, or whatever you want to call it. It goes by lots of names, but essentially it's the style of magic where you start a trick not really knowing where it's going to end up and improvise in the moment, building the routine as you go. It's super risky, it's kind of difficult, and I'm by no means the grand master of improvisational magic, but I've done it enough to know what works, what doesn't, and how you can do it yourself. So today, I'm going to share my secrets. The first thing to know about improv magic, and the first rule in my mind, is know a lot of magic. You will need to have a toolbox, a beefy, oversized toolbox of a lot of different sleights and techniques and methods that you can store away up here. The reason it's called jazz magic is because jazz musicians, and my dad is a jazz musician, so I should know this, they bounce off each other, they riff in the moment, and they can create things that they've never played before, just because they know a lot of chords and a lot of strings and notes and pluck movements. I am not a musician, and obviously that is evident because I just said the phrase pluck movements, but you know what I'm getting at. They know a lot of things, and therefore they can draw from that knowledge and use it in the moment, almost without thinking. It's just second nature, because they have so much back catalogue of material that they can use bits and pieces of that and come up with new original stuff in the moment. And of course, the same applies to magic. If you have a mental toolbox, a back catalogue of enough methods and sleights and techniques and moves and secrets, then you can use those in the moment to create the routine as you go. Which is why I wouldn't recommend it for beginners. I don't think that if you're a beginner you should go out there and try this necessarily, because ultimately you're probably going to land yourself in a situation where you're backed into a corner, there's a situation in front of you, your mind's gone blank, and you have no idea what trick to do. And that is a nightmare. That is not a situation I would recommend anyone getting into. Another thing to know about jazz magic is it will go wrong. And that's just kind of part of it. A musician moves on and they try something else. And in the same way, a magician can switch tracks and just go down a completely different route. Let's say you're having a card selected and lost into the deck, but you're actually controlling it. But then suddenly it actually does get lost in the deck? Well, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna say, oh, sorry, I've actually lost the card? Or are you just going to improvise an excuse to look through the deck and cut it to the top? Well, obviously you're gonna do the latter. You don't have to admit defeat too soon with improv magic. You can steer the course and move into another trick entirely. Now yes, once again, this is really difficult to do, and it does take a bit of confidence. The first time I ever tried jazz magic, everything went wrong completely, because I was trying it too soon, I didn't know enough magic, and ultimately I just had to fall back on an invisible deck. Yes, the audience was still entertained because the invisible deck is a good trick, but that wasn't my original intention. I didn't want to go into an invisible deck, and if I did, I'd go down a simpler route. But instead, I tried to be too fancy and too clever, which leads me on to my next bit of advice. Keep things simple. Keep things within certain parameters that you know. Don't try and be too risky too early on. Keep it to just a few things that you know, and keep the routine very, very short so that you can get out of there before anything goes wrong. There's nothing wrong with using simple methods and simple techniques. In fact, often they can result in really, really powerful magic, so don't try and use fancy techniques for the sake of it, because ultimately, remember that the spectator is not seeing the method, they're seeing the effect. So always be thinking about the effect, not the method. Don't be thinking, oh, I really want to use a second deal. Okay, let's use a second deal here. Only use a second deal if it's going to help the effect. Don't just throw in random methods for the sake of it, because the spectators aren't going to care about that. They care about the magic and the entertainment, so put the entertainment value first, and the methods are just kind of a byproduct. If you want to accomplish an effect, think about something that might be helpful to do that, and then use it. Don't do it the other way around, because that would be pointless. My next bit of advice is kind of secondary, kind of on the side, but I think it's really important. Make notes. Make notes of what goes right and what goes wrong. Keep a little diary of your jazz magic experiences and what you learnt from each one, because there will be something that doesn't quite land in the way you want. Maybe the trick works and the effect works, but just you personally weren't quite happy with a certain moment. Write it down, remember it for the next time, and the best part about keeping notes about your jazz performances is that you might come up with a routine that then becomes a staple, that then becomes something that is well practiced, well oiled, and makes it into your repertoire. Often the routines I perform came about because of something I did in a jazz performance. I was just messing around, jamming a few different ideas. Oh, maybe I want to do this. And then actually it works really well, and I think, I'm going to try and perfect that for a later performance. And also, practice jazz magic. You know, it's not something that you have to necessarily do in front of spectators. The reason I'm making this video, actually, the reason it was on my mind is because today I spent a couple of hours just practicing a jazz routine. I just had a deck of cards, I shuffled it, and I just started pretending that I was performing to a spectator and seeing what I could come up with in the moment. And I came up with something using 4 aces that I actually really like and I might perfect into a proper trick in the future. So it's only because I was experimenting that I came up with this. And again, this sort of leads into like my advice on creating magic, which again is something that I could make another video on, but often stuff I create comes about just from messing around in performances, and something happens that I never would have thought of otherwise. I think those sort of tricks are really, really special, and one of the sort of tricks that comes to mind in an example of a jazz performance I did once, I had a card, I'd controlled it to the bottom, I mercury folded it, if you know what a mercury fold is, taught it on the channel, and suddenly, in the moment, for some reason, and I don't know why, but I just sensed that I could get away with this thing that I would never normally try. And there was like a bar where people were like getting drinks, and I just took this mercury folded card and just threw it, and it landed on the bar, and then I just carried on. No one noticed. I wouldn't have done it unless I thought I would get away with it, but I just sensed that the misdirection was right, and I just did that. Threw it onto the bar without even looking, carried on the performance for a little bit, and then, riffled the deck and said, look on top of the bar, there's a folded card. They went over, unfolded it, and it was their card. Now, that is not something I could do time and time again because it was super situational. I am never going to be able to construct that situation again perfectly, but that's the beauty of it. Jazz magic allows you to perform tricks that you may never perform again. In fact, over in my Discord, someone asked a great question that was, have you ever done a trick that has gone wrong but turned out right in the end? And some people had some great answers to it. If you're not a member of the Discord, link in the description. But one performance came to my mind, which was, I once had someone name a card, and then I remembered the card they named had actually been signed at another table just a few performances ago, so I knew it wasn't in the deck. Now I could have gone, oh, name another card, that one's not in the deck, but instead I jazzed in the moment, turned it into a trick and said, look through the pack for your card. It won't be there. It has disappeared from the deck. And I turned it into a trick. It could easily have just been a mistake, but instead I made that the effect. I made that the focus. And obviously it was foolproof. It was a bulletproof method because how could he have made my card disappear? I just named it. Sometimes the methods aren't necessarily methods that you would read about in a magic book. Sometimes it's just what happens in the situation. Sometimes it's just pure chance, and you can use that to your benefit. Another example that comes to mind, I was using a marked deck. I had a card lost in the deck. I had it shuffled, genuinely, and I was just going to find it at a later point. But then I realized, because the deck was marked, that their card was on top. So I used it as an effect. In the moment, I just jazzed and said, now you just shuffled. It would be impossible if your card was on top of the deck. Turn over the top card. It was their card. That is a mind-blowing effect. Sometimes, that just happens. Now, those are all examples of tricks where a little bit of jazz has been added into an existing trick. But what if you want to jazz from the start? I've said the word jazz way too much, but what if you want to improvise from the beginning? You hand out a deck, you have it shuffled, you ask them to name any card, a completely free choice, and you have no idea what's going to happen, but you're thinking in your head of stuff that you can do. Maybe you take the deck back and look through, and the card is just a few from the top, so you count how many cards are above it, you deal those cards, second deal past their card, allow them to stop wherever, and you've stopped on their card. There are so many examples. That was just something I came up with in the moment, but you can just play, you can have fun. If it goes wrong, great, you've learned something. If it goes right, great, you've given them a great trick. It is so difficult to teach, and it's not really something that can be taught, I don't think. But I basically just want to make this video to give you the confidence to go out there and try it. If you know a lot of magic, just give it a go. It might go wrong, and that's okay, but if it goes right, you're gonna learn so much from that, and you might end up creating your next favorite routine. So there we go, that is this quick video on jazz magic. I really hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please do click the thumbs up button down below. That really helps the channel out. And make sure to subscribe if you're new. And I also have some giveaway winners to announce. So Game Blast, Syed Hyder, Tagerbird71 and Fading Ace 3, you have all won prizes that are on screen right now. Send me an email, cavan@cvn.cards, and I'll send over your prize. As well as this channel and the Cav channel, which you might be aware of, I also have another channel with my best friend Abby, which is called Cavan Abby. And over on that channel we do lifestyle challenges, like we tried yoga for a week and one of us ended up in hospital, no joke. We also tried meditation for a week, we've got a bunch more challenges lined up, and we also do podcast style discussions on deep topics and crazy games and all sorts. So if that sounds like fun, head over to the link in the description, subscribe to Cavan Abby today, and yeah, that is it for this video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you very, very soon.